Are the Texans set on drafting Tyler Booker with the 25th overall pick in the first round? Let's talk about it. This is the Texans Better Talk Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily Texans content. So this is the question of the day. Does Tyler Booker seem to be the guy the Texans are set on at 25? Let's talk about some pros and let's talk about some cons with Tyler Booker, the guard, the true guard out of Alabama. Now, before we get into that, I want to talk about the current relevant O-line depth. This is probably what the starting offensive line for the Houston Texans looks like, at least going into training camp. Of course, you want to have these guys battle out their spots. But look, I think Cam Robinson, with the investment they've made in Cam Robinson, I think he has to be the starting left tackle. From what I've kind of heard, what I've kind of looked at, he's a serviceable left tackle. He's not amazing, maybe a slight overpay. But when you spend $14 million on a guy and you trade away your franchise left tackle, the reality is you have to reach. And that's what the Texans did. They slightly reached with Cam Robinson. Still a great addition. Still an addition that needed to happen. But you can't be happy about the Tunsil trade and upset with Cam Robinson. And that's why with the investment, I think he will play the left tackle. Titus Howard, they've spent $16 million on. They just restructured his contract, which I think gave him around $12 million, but he was scheduled to make $16 million this year. Look, Titus Howard has to play on the offensive line. He needs to be a starter with the investment you've placed in him. You've gotten rid of Shaq and eaten some money. You've gotten rid of Tunsil. You really have to play Titus Howard with the investment. Now, moving on, Jarrett Patterson, the center, Drew Scruggs, right guard, and Blake Fisher, the right tackle. Obviously, these guys are still on their rookie contracts, so you're not really paying them a lot, and that's why they're, less. You don't have to rely on them as much because you're just not paying them as much. You haven't committed that money. Now, starting in the bottom left corner over here, we have Trent Brown. Trent Brown is a massive human being, a true tackle that the Texans just signed as a from free agency. He played on the Bengals for 3 games, started, gave up a sack, had 1 penalty, and then tore his patellar tendon. So we don't really know what we're getting out of Trent Brown. I've heard some people say that he was kind of washed and now he's coming off an injury, but I also see people say that he's a serviceable depth piece, which I think he is, and for $3 million, it's just good to have him in the room. If he beats out Blake Fisher, so be it. I don't know if he will, but I don't think he will, and that's why I don't have him starting right now at the moment. Then moving on, we have Laken Tomlinson. Laken Tomlinson, a little bit more of an investment, $5 million for 1 year for Laken Tomlinson. Now, I've heard reports, and I kind of believe that this guy is not very good. I think if he's starting, you just look at his play in Seattle. Seattle had arguably the worst interior offensive line in all of football. Laken Tomlinson was a part of that, playing guard for Seattle. So good depth piece. You did make a little more of a commitment throwing $5 million at him, but realistically, you just want him to battle it out with Scruggs. I'm hoping Scruggs can beat out Tomlinson just from kind of what I've heard, but you never know. Maybe he can't, and Tomlinson gets the start. That's fine as well. And then finally, Ed Ingram coming over from the Vikings. Don't have the salary number on him, but the Texans did give up a 2026 6th-round pick in the trade to acquire Ed Ingram. He's been an underachiever, and look, in Minnesota, they really, really did not want Ed Ingram to start. They had a backup for him in place. The backup got injured in training camp. Ed Ingram plays 7 or 8 games in the 2024 season before the backup gets healthy again, and they immediately swap him, and they never look back at Ed Ingram. So he has been a high 2nd-round pick that never really panned out. Again, you're not really comfortable with Ed Ingram playing at a guard position because he hasn't really gotten it done in his 3 years in the NFL. So that's why I think that this starting line is most likely to happen. Obviously, that can change with the draft, which we'll talk about, and of course with people beating each other out in training camp. But if you're going to take away anything from this graphic, take away the fact that Cam Robinson's probably your left tackle and Titus Howard is probably a left guard unless he beats out Blake Fisher and maybe goes back to right tackle. So a lot of unknowns on the line that I'm sure you'll see. But let's talk about Tyler Booker, which is really the purpose of this video. Tyler Booker is the guard out of Alabama, and I say guard, he is a true guard. He is not a player that you're going to have to move in and kick in from tackle. On Daniel Jeremiah's big board, he was ranked 13th overall. Mel Kiper didn't have him in the 25. I only found his top 25. PFF had him 48th, and Bleacher Report had him 31st. So you can kind of see the varying spots and where Tyler Booker falls on analysts' big boards, but he is the consensus number one guard. And we've constantly heard over and over again that, guard isn't an extremely valuable pick to pick in the first round, which I do agree with. That being said, if you're going to pick a guard in the first round, it pretty much has to be Tyler Booker. You don't really want to reach on guys, especially guards. I mean, we saw what happened with Kenyon Green. He was like the perfect prospect physically, and he never panned out. So I say all that to say that Tyler Booker is the best guard, pretty much consensus-wide, if you're factoring in straight guards and not tackles that can get kicked into guard. So let's talk about Booker versus Banks really quick. Banks obviously being another popular draft pick for some people. I want to specifically hone in on Banks because I made a video before the Cam Robinson pickup and before the Trent Brown pickup about why Banks is the solution to the offensive line, and I'm kind of changing that, and I'll tell you why. So first, let's start with Booker. Again, Booker, the best pure guard prospect. He has day one starter potential, meaning you just plop him in after training camp and he's a starter. He also has great leadership traits, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You could also make the argument that we already have a lot of offensive tackle depth and we have a lot of bad offensive guard depth, meaning you trust Titus Howard, Blake Fisher, Cam Robinson, and Trent Brown more to fill those two tackle spots than you do a bad Lincoln Tomlinson and a bad, never panned out Ed Ingram, and then of course Juice Scruggs and who else is it? Juice Scruggs, and then if Titus Howard's there, Titus Howard. So that's what I mean by that. You could argue that we have a lot worse guard depth, and that Booker really fills that guard depth and raises that floor. And talking about floors, Booker also has really, really good pass protection floor, meaning that he's really good against pass protection. Like, you don't really have to project too much. We've seen him be great as a pass protector. Okay, now let's move over to the Banks side. Banks, if you want to make the argument that he offers you more tackle guard flexibility, you obviously can. Banks is a tackle. Some people believe he will stay at tackle in the NFL. Some people believe he should be moved into guard. You could argue that there's no long-term tackles on the Texans, and I completely agree with this. Let me get this straight and just say this right out the gate. The Texans should and can still draft a tackle. All of the tackles they have, they're only on like 1 year deals. Like you can move on from Titus Howard if he plays bad this year. Cam Robinson's a 1 year deal, Trent Brown's a 1 year deal, and then Blake Fisher I guess is on a rookie contract, but he's the only guy who's not really on a 1 year deal. So I say that all to say that you can try to look for a longer term tackle solution with Kelvin Banks. Also better positional value, which we kind of touched on. Tackle is a just better position to draft because you can always kick them inside, whereas guard, it's a little hard to kick them outside. There's nowhere else for that player to go, really besides the bench. Also, Banks gives you more athleticism, which we're going to do a deep dive into in a second, and he has a good pass protection floor. Obviously, it's at the tackle spot, so it's not a one-to-one comparison, but at positional-wise, I think Booker is a better just right now, less of a project in pass protection, higher floor at the guard spot, but again, hard to make the one-on-one comparison. So again, just really quickly talking about the pros for Tyler Booker. Here's what would happen if you were able to draft Tyler Booker and he panned out, right? You would move Juice to center, probably, assuming that Juice can beat out Patterson. Remember, Patterson is a 6th round pick. Juice Scruggs is a 2nd round pick from the same draft class. He would also beat out Ingram and Tomlinson. You really hope, if you're spending this 1st round draft pick capital, you hope he beats out Ingram and Tomlinson. He's 6'5", 325. That's not necessarily a pro. I just wanted to kind of give you a gauge on his size. But what is a pro is that he's a tone setter, really powerful punches at the first point of contact. He's a really physical guard that wants to maul you constantly. Just really aggressive, but not overbearing. Just really aggressive, really physical play style. He was a captain at Alabama and has been described like Will Anderson was at Alabama. Look, the Texans love personality fits. They constantly say, we have a type of player personality we want to be Houston Texans. We're not going to go chase guys that have had outside of football issues, arrests and things like that. They want stand-up leaders, and Tyler Booker really fits their personality test, really fits that. That's another reason why I think the Texans will draft him. Like I said, alluded to before, talking about pass protection, he's really good against power rushers, and he's a good run blocker as well once he gets attached to the linebacker. Keyword being once he gets attached to the linebacker. And I have down there basically a blue chip starter. I mean, things would have to go very wrong for him not to be one of your starting guards when you draft him 25 overall or when you move up for him. Okay, some quick cons we're going to get into, and we're going to talk about a lot about the athleticism. Look, the lateral mobility is not there. It is there, but it's weaker. The foot speed's not amazing, and those two can be factored into athleticism. So let's talk about athleticism. Now, this is gonna look kind of confusing, but let me just explain this really quickly. So this is Tyler Booker versus Tate Ratledge. Now, Tate Ratledge on most people's boards is around a third-round pick at the guard position. Tate Ratledge is a true guard out of Georgia. So focus on the two graphics on the left. This is the NFL Combine score calculator, okay? So production score, basically the NFL looks at how productive a player was in college and ranks that. Tyler Booker ranks first in production score. Now let's look at the athleticism score test. This comes from combine drills. Tyler Booker ranked 17th in that, which I believe is the worst among guards. He was the worst guard athletically at the combine. You factor those together, you get a total score of 75, which ranks him as the 7th best guard according to the combine statistics, and a little bit of production score as well from your college career. Now let's look at his RAS, which is the relative athletic score. What this does, separate from the NFL Combine, but this looks at previous players in the same amount, in the same position, and rates them athletically. So when ranked against previous players who played guard in the NFL, Tyler Booker has a 3.64, which is pretty awful. And I bring up all these numbers just to say he's not an amazing athlete. If we look on the right two graphics instead, look at Tate Ratledge, projected to be a third-round pick. Tate Ratledge has an amazing athletic score. He was the most athletic guard on paper after the combine, putting up a 98 athleticism score, a 76 production score, which was only third obviously behind Booker, and his total score was an 84, ranked first among guards because of that pure athleticism. So again, you look at his RAS chart, same thing, looking at guards in the NFL right now, comparing them to Tate Ratledge. He got a 9.96, and remember, this is out of 10. He was a 9.96 out of 10, which is just freaky, like freakish athlete for his size. So that's why the reservations and the athleticism kind of come to me. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that the RAS score and all that is everything, but if you want to make the argument that, maybe Tyler Booker shouldn't be drafted 25th overall, you can definitely point to the athleticism. Now, that being said, he had the best production score, which is how he actually fared while playing the game, at least according to the NFL Combine. So you have to factor that in as well. But kind of recapping this video, what do you guys think? Do you think they are set on Booker now that we have so much tackle depth? Do you think they should still go after an offensive tackle and really trying to look for a long-term solution at that spot? Or do you think they'll solidify their guard position with Tyler Booker? Or do they wait for maybe the second round or third round for Tate Ratledge coming out of Georgia? Let me know in the comments and let me know what you guys think, and I will see y'all in the next one, man. Peace out.